Welcome, quiet soul. You always hear what others miss. So today, you are the listener history's been waiting for. Today, you're not sitting in an office. No Slack. No handcrafted oat milk latte. Just a pair of worn-out sandals, a grease-stained rope, and a limestone block heavier than your boss's SUV times 3. Welcome to the shift of an Egyptian pyramid builder, one of the silent hands behind the world's greatest structure, whose name no one ever bothered to carve into stone, but that's all right. Today your name is Huyuf, Team 3, Block Hauling Unit 7, and you're about to find out what it feels like to drag a 15-ton stone across the desert with nothing but patience, and a spine as sturdy as a temple pillar. Just don't go imagining this is a slave's life. Hollywood really botched that part. No chains, no whips. You're not here to suffer. You're here to build. So ready. The sand is heating up. The stone is waiting. And Pharaoh, he's not a fan of delays. Before we dive in, I'd love to know, did anything in this story strike a chord with you? Spark your curiosity, drop your thoughts in the comments below, because your insight might just be the little treasure our whole community wants to dig up. And hey, if you're enjoying this, go ahead and like, share or subscribe, because sometimes a single click can send 100 amazing stories rippling outward. The sun has just yawned above the horizon. Its first rays creep across the edge of the desert like a lazy cat. You wake up not to birdsong or blessing, but to a voice echoing across the canal, hoarse, gravelly, and anything but divine. Which block came in from Tura today? Yep, that's your alarm clock. No snooze button, no morning playlist, just the stench of river mud, the slap of water against wooden hulls, and the eternal question, how do we unload 200 tons of stone without breaking our backs? You step out of your tent. Bare feet sink into the wet, swollen mud left by the annual Nile flood, nature's only shipping season. Before you, a row of long wooden boats. Yes, boats, the fragile things you're expected to trust with blocks the size of hippos, while you personally still don't know how to swim. At that moment, you wish you were one of those movie slaves. At least they don't have to track tide charts and hit stone-loading deadlines. Here, everyone's got a role, and yours is to drag stone from the Tura quarry, time it with the flood and paddle hard enough that the boat doesn't flip like a dead fish. And when the paddling's done, you pray the Nile doesn't sneeze. Don't picture ancient boats as some bamboo raft drifting aimlessly. These were crafted from imported Lebanese cedar lashed with ropes held together by anxiety. Every delivery is a test of your nerves. If the ropes loosen the stone shifts and the boat flips, then what archaeologists find centuries later won't be an artifact. It'll be you. A lump of mud and bones at the bottom of the river next to a block engraved. Fragile. Handle with care. Shipping schedule. 1 season a year. About 2 months of high water, just enough time to haul every last block from the Tura quarry to the grand construction site at Giza. Miss the window. Better luck next flood season. No cancellations, no returns, no customer service hotline. This is Egypt's version of Amazon delivery, available only when the Nile god says so. You wonder what happens if I miss a block. Answer, you don't wonder, you deliver. Because waiting at the end of that river route is an artificial harbour, a fully managed drop-off zone. You dock in the right place, offload the right stone, and vanish like you were never there. Miss the spot and the overseer will curse your name till next flood season, in ancient Egyptian no less. You won't catch a word, but you'll feel every syllable. One day you see your colleague Mera scribbling something onto a papyrus scroll. You ask him what he's doing. He shrugs. Just journaling. You know, in case someone someday wants to know how rough logistics are these days. You laugh. Who would care about that? Turns out thousands of years later someone did care. They found that scroll and called it the earliest proof of a legendary supply chain. You remember it for a different reason. That was the day Mera slipped and fell straight into the river. The stone safe. The boat fine. Mera soaked like a wet cat. But he held tight to that scroll. Now that's a logistics man. And then it hits you, this 15-ton block, once it's off the boat. Where does it go? How does it climb uphill and land in its exact spot, no more than a hand's width off? You don't need the answer today. Because today your job is simple. Start the journey. From this very dock. Think rowing the boat was tough. Welcome to the next phase in this full-body torture routine, dragging stone across the desert. Sure, dragging sounds gentle enough. But let's be real. You don't have wheels. You don't have pulleys. You don't have divine intervention. What you do have is a sledge, just a wooden sled worn smooth by rock, groaning every time another block is thrown on top. And what stands before you, a stretch of sand as soft and fine as flour, ready to swallow everything except your exhaustion. You tighten your belt. Bare feet braced on the slippery board, hands clenched around the rope so hard it hurts the kind of pain that doesn't make you scream but burns into your memory. In front of you, a cold white stone, slick as goat fat, weighing as much as 3 hippos in a panic hug. You think well stone's heavy, but sand's soft so it should slide right. Nope. 30 of you shoulders, straining breath, huffing, move that beast a grand total of 2 handspans, then a shout breaks the rhythm, water team on path, and from the rear they come charging a small squad holding jugs and ladles, looking like desert midwives. But they're not here to deliver babies, they're here to deliver traction. With practiced hands they splash water onto the sand ahead just enough to keep it firm. Not muddy, not soupy, just perfectly damp like your back under the sun. A minute later the miracle happens. The sledge glides. Smooth as a snowboard skimming down a child's cheek. You move backward step by step. The wind kicks against your face. Sand clings to your lips, your ears, your eyebrows. Every step is a prayer that the rope won't slip. 2 guys in front of you just skidded backward, landing on their butts. Another missed his grip and ate a faceful of fresh wet sand. Yeah, he learned what Egyptian dirt tastes like that day. And you, right in the chaos, bite down on your lip and give it everything you've got. You're not just dragging a stone, you're orchestrating it. The conductor of a screeching symphony across the Sahara. You wonder who was the first to think of wetting the sand, that genius deserves their name carved into stone, or at least a day off from pulling rope. Years from now, modern scientists will call it friction reduction via moisture between granular particles. Amsterdam University will simulate it. You call it the reason you're still alive. Because when you're dragging a rock 5 times your weight, and the ground below crumbles like overcooked oatmeal, your faith slides faster than the sledge unless the water team steps in. Sounds simple, but this isn't just some bucket crew. They're elite logistics. They can hear ground tension. They can see humidity by sand colour. And they manage water like an irrigation system run by pure gut instinct. Some historians once thought all this water splashing was part of a sacred ritual, like calling on the spirit of the sledge to bless your path. You just laugh. Around here, the only spirit that matters is a steady ladle hand. 1 stone down. You glance back at the path you've crossed. Not even 300 meters. Nearly 2 hours. A team of soaked, sore, sand-caked humans. But the stone's in place. Your bones are still intact. That's what we call a good day. Still, things didn't always slide like a dream. You think that stone just keeps gliding along like roller skates on polished floor? Oh no. When the sun blazes too hot, water evaporates faster than you can pour it. The sand turns mushy again, the sledge grinds to a stop, and the rope feels like it's about to snap the tendons in your wrist. At moments like that, you don't blame anyone. You just stare at the sky, then at the ground, then at the stubborn stone refusing to move and think, well, now what? And right on cue, the overseer screams, "Call the grease team." You sigh. Not because you hate them, no, far from it. You sigh because you know exactly what their arrival means. A spectacular greasy mess for everyone. 3 men show up, bare-chested hair stuck to their foreheads, each cradling a ceramic jar like its holy relic. One's carrying beeswax, the second castor oil, the third a whole tub of ox fat so rich even the stray dogs from the village wouldn't dare go near it. Every time they show up, you're torn between saluting them like miracle-working doctors or stepping aside like they're unsanitary chefs at a street stall. The first guy kneels down, whipping out a brush made from donkey tails, smearing fat across the sand like he's repainting the desert. The sticky sound of sand meeting grease is something between kneading wet dough and stepping in warm soup. The second guy mutters as he works. Better keep your steps even, or you'll slide face first into that boulder. And the third, the clear boss, stands with arms crossed and declares proudly, "Without us, you guys would still be dragging that stone come next flood season." You nod, genuinely, because the moment they're done prepping the path, everything changes. The rock begins to move like it's enchanted. The sledge lets out this gorgeous squeal like music made of friction and effort. Watching it glide makes your heart race like you're at a chariot race. Except if this one veers off track, it'll crush someone's ribs. Grease splatters into your beard, oil coats your arms. You, the one at the rope, are now sweating pure fat, but you don't care, because it's working. The stone is moving, inching toward the base of the pyramid, and in that moment you don't feel like a labourer anymore. You feel like part of a massive machine, slippery, grimy, glorious. You look up at the first steps of the pyramid. The first wall of stone is waiting. The problem. How do you get a block the size of 3 full-grown hippos all the way up there? You tighten your grip on the rope. Behind you, your crew is in position. Ahead of you, a massive ramp, silent, ominous, waiting. No drums, no flags. Just one raw human yell up the ramp, and you start moving. Every step is slick with grease. Every pull feels like it yanks your entire spine forward, but you don't stop. Because today another layer of the pyramid will take shape, and without you that stone would just sit there like civilization never began. In front of you isn't a staircase. There's no elevator. Just one colossal incline spiraling around the pyramid like a divine serpent, majestic and merciless. It doesn't shout slogans, it whispers, "Think you can take me." The Egyptians call it a ramp. You call it the long slide into pain. There are many types, and not one of them is easy. The most common is the external ramp wrapping around the pyramid like a giant scarf. Each loop grows taller, steeper and longer. From afar it looks like a sand serpent coiling tighter and tighter, swallowing each stone and every drop of your sweat. To haul a stone this way you end up walking multiple times the pyramid's actual height because you're spiralling up in circles. Then there's the internal ramp, allegedly hidden within the pyramid's thick stone walls. Modern scholars call it a spiral ramp tucked inside, hugging the inner perimeter like a maze with sharp corners and tight turns. They even use high-tech methods like muon scanning, mography or something to detect these hidden paths. Sounds fancy. But back in your day all you know is if dragging stones in pitch-black tunnels is an option you'd rather roast in the sun. And finally there's the straight ramp, a massive incline built directly from the ground to one pyramid face like a titanic bridge. Sounds efficient, but you know better. A straight ramp 100 meters tall would need millions of bricks to support it, and if it's not heavy enough, the wind could blow the whole thing to rubble. So most folks ditch that idea, except for those obsessed with drawing models. Call it whatever. Build it, however. The one thing you know. That stone's going up not with cranes, not with carts, but with you. Not just you. Behind you are 4 others yelling in rhythm, "Heave-ho, heave-ho!" Beside you a pair of hands holds the balance, adjusting angles, shoving support sticks under the sled every few inches. Up ahead, the coordinator shouts like a game show host, "Slow down, lean left, stones tilting." You've always wondered why ancient records don't describe the ramps in detail. Now you know. Who would want to document dragging themselves up a 70-degree slope, their sweat pooling like rivers, their palms seared by rope burn? Some stories don't make it into history books, because if they did, people might realize even pharaohs needed day laborers. You begin to suspect the scribes left it out on purpose, not because of some engineering mystery, but because the truth was too ordinary. That a pyramid wasn't built by magic, but by teamwork, rope ox fat, and date cakes. Once someone suggested building a wooden crane, then the first test stone dropped and nearly flattened a cow. Decision made, back to the ramp. Old, painful, but reliable. You keep pulling. Every turn creaks through your spine. The sun dumps heat like hot oil. Your hands are burning your shoulders, about to rip loose, but you hold on. Because up top someone's waiting to set the block into place, and down below others are queued up for their turn, and you know if one person lets go, the whole line tumbles like marbles off a table. Steady, the overseer yells. You let go, your hands are scorched, your back's a wreck, but the block has reached its tier. You collapse to the ground, gasping like you just escaped a monster. And in your spinning head a very unhistorical question appears. Why didn't I become a farmer? Then you laugh, because when you look up you see sunlight gleaming off the white limestone. The structure's taller than yesterday, and you know you just moved a piece of eternity. No one will carve a statue of you. No one will remember your name. But without you, the pyramid would still be just a dream on paper. After dragging that stone up a ramp longer than your entire lifespan, you think maybe you've earned a break in the shade. But no. A master builder slaps your back and says, "Now comes the hard part." You glance at the block you just hauled up, massive, perfectly square, but it's not in place yet. And this isn't dominoes. This is a pyramid. 1 inch off today, and the whole legacy leans for eternity. You enter the fine-tuning phase. No laser levels, no balancing machines, just wooden levers, a couple of pulleys, crocodile grease, the same stuff you used on your beard, and a group of workers squatting around like they're playing chess with Horus. You've heard of a new theory: place 12 logs around a stone block and it'll roll like a temporary wheel. It sounds suspiciously modern, but when you try it, it works. The block spins gently around the logs, smooth as a water jar nudged by a cat. You turn to the master builder and grin. It works. Someone should write this down. He smirks. Pharaoh doesn't want anyone else to know. Ah, so that's it. Mystery is power. If commoners learn the technique, who's left to fear the gods? Suddenly it makes sense why no technical manuals were ever etched into stone, only scenes of kneeling figures and beams of sacred light perfectly aligned with summer solstice. Beautiful, yes. Precise, absolutely. Scientific, without a doubt. But technical instructions for future generations, nowhere. So you keep fine-tuning. One person wedges a stick under the stone, another pulls the rope ever so slightly, a third shouts, "A little more tilt left." No one has a computer yet. The whole process clicks like a symphony, composed of sweat instinct and nerves strung tighter than harp strings. Sometimes the block won't budge. You shout, "Where's the lever?" Then wedge in the wooden beam, throw in your weight, and crack. A sharp sound of triumph echoes across the sand. The block settles perfectly into its notch like the final tooth in the pyramid's enormous grin. You don't know how you pulled it off. No patents, no YouTube tutorials, just calloused hands, a brain-stretched taut, and a strange kind of faith that if the generations before you did it, then damn it, so can you. Not for glory, not for money, but because if this block is even slightly off, Pharaoh will show up in your dreams tonight and smack your rear with his royal scepter. You've asked yourself what gives the pyramid its power: engineering, religion, or just mass psychological commitment. You don't have the answer. But you know one thing without total coordination, from the grease boy to the rope haulers, from the rollers to the guy shouting directions, no pharaoh would ever rest in peace atop this towering tomb. You wipe the sweat from your brow and look at the stone now perfectly aligned. Someone pats your shoulder. That was the final block for this layer. You exhale. But when you look up, the next level is already waiting. Welcome to the world of people who didn't invent the wheel, but still managed to move an entire civilization. Midday. You sit on the stone you just placed, sweat evaporating in the scorching sun. Your arms ache, your back screams, but what rises inside you isn't quite pride. It's a question pulsing through every vertebra. What exactly am I building? You look up. The pyramid looms above layer upon layer of stone, so tightly stacked it seems untouched by human hands. But you know better. Every block up there meant sweat down here. Every perfect edge came from tugging, nudging, levering with almost divine precision, and then you look at your own hands, cracked, greasy, nameless. And yet they're the reason everything fits. Pharaoh doesn't need the names of the workers, you think. He just needs the stones to fit. He doesn't want your biography. He wants a myth that this was built by the gods, that Ra himself directed it, that the stones climbed into place by magic, and you are the shadow erased from the story. You used to wonder why no blueprints were left behind. No sketches, no scribbled notes saying, "Here's how we did it." But now you understand. It's not that they forgot. It's that they wanted to forget. Because if future generations knew the pyramid was built with sweat levers and clever physics, the myth would crumble. And without the myth, Pharaoh is just another foreman shouting orders. You're not building a tomb. You're building propaganda, a lion stone, grand, beautiful, eternal. So what do you get out of it? No money, no fame, just a few meals, a makeshift tent, and a back that'll curve before its time. But you know this too, without you, there'd be no legend. And somewhere between the sunlight cutting across the pyramid's edge, you feel proud. You think to yourself, Pharaoh may not need me, but the thing he's using to reach the heavens, it only stands because of me. Your name isn't carved in stone, but your hands are. In every edge, every seam, every subtle polish no one will ever see. You rise. Your shadow stretches across the sand, merging with hundreds of others, the living, the dead, the forgotten. You're no god. You're no ruler. You're just a builder. But you know this, without people like you, even Pharaoh couldn't reach the sky. And so you kept working until the sun began to tilt west. You stepped off the work site, a rolled-up sleeve slung loosely around your neck, shoulders still streaked with grease from midday. You hadn't even sat down before someone shoved a bowl of beer into your hand, still cool as if it had just been pulled from a well. You took a sip. Your throat, raw from dessert dust, suddenly felt smooth as if someone had rinsed it with olive oil. You couldn't remember how many stones you'd hauled. Only the hiss of ropes, the foreman's shouts, and the slick, familiar sound of stone grinding down the ramp. But now all of it dissolved into the golden foam floating in your bowl. One drink and your duty ended for today. Beside you, your buddy Kepper sat flat on the ground, legs wrapped in wet cloth after standing in soaked sand all morning. He let out a breath, pulled out a chunk of bread dry as limestone, and bit into it like it was the grandest prize. You teased tastes good. He grimaced, crunchier than floor tiles. Laughter bubbled across the resting camp. Everyone was tired, but everyone sat close like the only distance left in the world was the space between bread and mouth. Someone pulled out a strip of dried meat and handed you a corner. You took it, but before you could say thanks, a voice called out from a distance. Up early tomorrow, Block 37's got to be in place before sunrise. You exhaled. Of course. There's always some damn Block 37. An older worker lit an oil lamp, its dim glow flickering across dusty faces. He rubbed his shoulder and muttered, "Your backs are going to scream twice as hard tomorrow." You asked, "How do you know?" He chuckled raspy. "Because I once thought I'd be fine, till I couldn't even lift a beer bowl." You tilted your head back and finished the drink. The beer slid down your throat, cold, earthy, like nothing you'd ever tasted outside this life. You didn't know what they brewed it with. All you knew was it made you forget you were half naked under a 100-degree sky. Someone asked idly, "Hey, I heard the old-timers say, if you work enough years, they'll bury you in the craftsman section." That true. Another man chewing meat replied bluntly, "Yeah, but you've got to live long enough to be picked." You said nothing. You just thought, today I'm alive. Tomorrow I haul more stone. And tomorrow night I'll sit right here again. Bread in hand, beer in bowl, laughter in the air, the scent of sweat and grease hanging like smoke. No one forces you to do this. But you still show up. Because deep down everyone wants a seat at the end of the day, with beer, with brothers, and with the feeling that you built something vast with your own two hands. The last gulp slides down your throat. You stand watching the sun disappear behind the pyramid's shadow. Tomorrow begins again. And your name? Who knows, maybe it's buried somewhere in the whispers of the sand. More than 4,000 years have passed and the pyramid still stands tall in the desert, while modern humans are still sitting around debating how it was built. Theories are born, then contradicted, replaced, rebutted, and looped right back to where they started. An endless carousel of speculation. But what the ancient Egyptians left behind wasn't an answer. They left silence solid as stone and a structure so flawless that people hesitate to believe it was made by human hands. Because when beauty reaches perfection, we begin to doubt our own touch. There were no blueprints copied, no technical logs, no proud declarations, only stone, and stone doesn't speak. But that silence wasn't an oversight, it was intentional. Because maybe true power doesn't lie in what can be explained, but in what makes people too awed to even ask. The builders never asked to be remembered. They didn't need temples in their name, they only needed one step placed right. One corner perfectly flush. One triangular shadow stretched across the sky at sunset. They didn't need admiration from future generations, just that the pyramid would never fall. Today, standing before Giza, we still haven't agreed on how they built it. But the more important question, the one few dare ask, is, why were they able to? It wasn't because they had wheels. It wasn't because they had slaves. It was because they had a group of people willing to live their entire lives for something they'd never be credited for. And maybe that is the greatest lever humanity has ever created, not to lift stones, but to lift legends.